What's up, you guys, and welcome back to the PHNX Mercury podcast. I am your host, Erica Day, and I am joined by Stephen Pridgeon Gardner. Stephen, how are you today?
I'm blessed as always. How about yourself, Erica? How you doing?
It's good. You know how I feel about hump day. We're on the downward slope. I get to see the Mercury play in like 48 hours. So my life is rapidly improving as we, tumble down this week. But also, again, I always do a bad job of shouting out our producer, but we are joined today by Miss Leah behind the scenes. And if you guys weren't listening to the Wildcat podcast and listened to Mike's and, just in-depth shout out to Leah. Leah is the reason that the wheels turn at PHNX. We could not do this without her. So shout out to Leah for hanging out with us today behind the scenes on the Mercury show. Before we get started, though, Stephen and I really wanted to make sure we gave you guys the shout out that you guys deserve. Stephen and I could not have asked for a better community of people, but the outward pouring of love and support that we've received, especially over the last week or so, has just been superb. And so we just wanted to make sure we said thank you. We got to 1,000 followers on Twitter, and we could not have asked for a better group of individuals to help build this community with. And we are just so thankful for Saul putting us in this position, PHNX for putting us in this position, putting us in the spot that we can, meet with you guys and build the community that we're building. It's just something really special.
Yeah, one thing that we are going to do, something I always bring to any environment that I'm a part of in any capacity, is celebrating everything. I think when there's a goal at hand, things can get kind of lost in the process as far as milestones go. And the way to continue to just make sure everybody is aware of the things being checked off on that list in your process is to celebrate everything. And we had our first takeover a couple of weeks ago. That was a milestone in and of itself, which we quite literally celebrated with a handful of you all, which again, we appreciate y'all for tapping in with us always. And then the other big thing now has been the 1,000 follower milestone on our PHNX Mercury account on Twitter, or X if you call it that. So again, we appreciate you all, and we look forward to continuing to celebrate even more successes as we continue to build up this community that we're establishing, one that's very engaging, informative, and entertaining all in one. So we appreciate you all again, and we're looking forward to building more. Thank you so much.
I know Stephen's been doing this a little while longer than I have. It's my first season. And like I said, I could not be more thankful to have Stephen to get help from. I always say this, and he knows I mean it. This guy really is smarter than me. So I could not do this without him. So I want to make sure I give Stephen his flowers as well.
But it's a team thing, though. It can't be me without you. You can't be you without me. So it's very much a team thing. You can't go isolation all the time. You gotta have pick and roll play sometimes. So that's what we do.
Which one's BG and who's DT? You let me know.
Let's let our followers decide that one.
I'm gonna be putting out a little poll on Twitter here very shortly, and you guys are gonna have to let us know who's who, okay? Anyways, before we go any further, also, some of you guys have been watching on Twitter, which we really appreciate, but we want you guys to join in on the live chat. So below the tweet that you guys are watching right now, there is an additional tweet with a link to join the live chat here on YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube already, be sure to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the PHNX Sports YouTube channel, do all the things that I always bully you guys into doing anyways. We've already got some really solid people here in the chat. We've got Andy, my mom, my sister-in-law, my brother, Mr. David, who is a really good friend of ours over at Desert Wave, and he's in the chat today. David is always complaining because he always has to work during our show, and today he has the day off, and so he gets to be in our show live and in the flesh. Very, very exciting stuff. With all that being said, though, there was some movement yesterday in the WNBA with the Commissioner's Cup, so I wanted to talk about that with Stephen a little bit. You guys don't know this, but Stephen and I don't get, a ton of opportunity to face-to-face chat. So, our conversation about the Commissioner's Cup is about to be what you guys see right now. And I was pretty ecstatic about the play we saw yesterday from both the Lynx and the Liberty. Overall, I didn't really have a dog in the fight, but I was pretty satisfied with the outcome. It was a really good basketball game, high level stuff, two really solid teams. after the Lynx did win the game, I did have to have a giggle because Cheryl Reeves talking about how now they're going to have to talk about us. And I'm like, Cheryl, you obviously don't watch the show because we've been talking about y'all being great. Okay. So, yeah, the Lynx.
It's like we find a way to talk about them every episode. Yeah, so for Cheryl, if Cheryl happens to be watching our beloved podcast, first of all, thank you for tapping in, Cheryl. Secondly, we spent quite a bit of time talking about your team in particular, even though we're not covering your team in particular. So I would like for us to be excluded from the strays that you were shooting off yesterday, which I'm glad you were talking. I love that Cheryl obviously first took the opportunity to shine light on her team because her team is very much, and they might not necessarily have the super team names in terms of gravity and attention, but in terms of how their pieces fit together and who's coaching on the sideline for them, they're very much punching like a super team. So I was glad she took the opportunity to acknowledge that bit of it, but also to talk her talk and let people know, like, yeah, we've been good for a while. I'm glad you guys are finally catching on. It's been a minute, but again, better late than never. But you all that are late, make sure you let people know that you are late to this thing, that you're hopping on at the same time as most people are. So I appreciated that part of it. I love when coaches take the politically correct hat off and they talk their talk, even if it is for just a couple of seconds or for the entire post game presser like it was for Cheryl. I love that moment for her. She's been an elite coach for over a decade now, and she's coached across multiple roster renditions from Maya Moore and Sylvia Fowles to now, and everywhere in between. And they've always remained relevant. She's the mainstay amidst all the change. And, she deserves her flowers. And I feel like this was an opportunity for her to receive even the slightest bit of it. It's well overdue. And I think this is the start of something for her. She's going to be now coaching the women's national team next month.
Yeah, and actually, funny you bring that up. I meant to talk about this a little bit on Monday, but we've had a busy week. I feel like as WNBA fans in general, but we didn't mention this on Monday, so I wanted to make sure I got it in today that Dearica Hamby did replace Cameron Brink on the 3-on-3 Olympic roster. I know we're going to probably receive an influx of comments about how that is a stupid decision, and I will let Steven tell us why that is not a stupid decision.
Well, there's always context, and I love to apply it. I will take this opportunity to shout out the homie Isis Young for her covers with Yahoo Sports on the women's side of basketball, who also just got a promotion she's actually covering the NBA draft now with Yahoo Sports as well as a host. So shout out to her for that. But the context that she applied, which I learned over the weekend, in respect to the decision as far as who would replace Cameron Brink, there's certain stipulations and regulations as far as the Olympics, as far as who can actually be replaced by who. It has to be somebody that's had X amount of prior experience with Team USA competing within a certain threshold of years. That naturally takes away a lot of the options that people were trying to throw out. So for example, Caitlin Clark would not fit those requirements in terms of a player that could replace anybody that was presently on the roster that they already submitted, even if it is because of injury, like it is in the case of Cameron Brink. So that context applied. Also, with the context of that team, the 3x3 team needing a front court piece that can serve as a center that can also be versatile, I don't think there's a better option in terms of who's available than Cameron Brink's front court mate, who's been having an all-star caliber season, an all-W caliber season, arguably on both ends of the floor, in Dearica Hamby. And I think that's the best you could possibly do under the restraints, but I also think generally excluding the restraints, they couldn't have done better than adding Dearica. And it's going to be fun to see Dearica playing with Ryan and everyone else that's going to be on that team.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is no shot at Cameron. Y'all know how I feel about Miss Brink. But I mean, they could have, these two names, Dearica Hamby, Cameron Brink, could have been interchangeable with each other. And I'm not saying that this team is going to have the same genetic makeup with or without Cam and with or without Dearica. But that being said, the skill level does not drop in any way, shape, or form by going from Cameron Brink to Dearica Hamby. I mean, Dearica Hamby does have 3-on-3 experience, won a gold medal at FIBA tournament last year. Like, she is, for lack of a better term, the right person for the job in this situation, especially given all the contacts that Mr. Steven just supplied to us. So I'm satisfied with this decision. I think that it was the best thing for the team. I think that's something that people really forget about, especially when talking about in context of 3-on-3. There's only 4 players. So you really have to be able to play everywhere on the court in order to be on 3-on-3. And that is no shot at any other rookie that was on the laundry list of people that you guys would have rather had over Dearica Hamby. But that being said, Dearica can play anywhere on the court, and as Stephen was saying, on both sides of the ball. So it is an invaluable skill set that they added back to the 3-on-3 with losing Cam.
Yeah, and I think the big thing when you're looking at 3x3, or I don't know if they call it 3-on-3 or 3x3. I always just kind of juggle both. But in that game, I had the opportunity to talk to Alicia Gray and Ryan Howard earlier this season, and just asking them, because they are both players that have spent time in that particular Olympic event. And as well as their head coach, Tanisha Wright. I got to speak with all three, and I was just asking, like, what kind of skills do you glean or do you earn or kind of hone in on more from playing 3x3? And pretty much all three of them has a different skill that they spoke to. But generally speaking, one of the biggest things was conditioning, because it's such an up-tempo game, such a high-paced game, and there's more space in terms of how much more real estate on the court there is to occupy, because there's 2 or 4 less bodies on both sides of the ball in terms of combining that. And then the other big thing, which I think Alicia spoke to, was the fact that you have to be that much better with your defensive versatility, but also your ability to just guard your particular matchup, because there's not nearly as much help to rely on. So if you can't guard your individual matchup, it's going to be a lot of straight line layups, and your teammates are going to be mad at you, or you're going to be giving up wide open threes, one or the other. So I think those things are important to speak to, and Dearica is really good at scoring in those same contexts, but also defending in those contexts. And I think it's going to be fun to watch her and all her activity back into that. But my question to you, which I just thought about while I was speaking, and it's something that I think is also a great question. I think Dearica was one of the players that was going to benefit most from the influx of players that wouldn't be available for all-star voting. She might not necessarily get the fan vote, but as far as the players and the coaches, she would 100% get those votes in the front court. I feel like that might remove her from that conversation because she'll have Olympic commitments. So I'm just curious, what is your assessment of where Dearica was? Because naturally she's not going to be able to compete in that particular game now.
Yeah, and I'm actually, now that you've brought that up, I'm a little bit curious to see if maybe the 3-on-3 team is showcased in any way, shape, or form at All-Star, just because of the kind of, that we just spoke about. I mean, it makes logical sense for them to at least come on the floor for a little appearance. Maybe that's just my thought process. But I do agree with you that Dearica is absolutely having an all-star caliber year, and if she didn't get the fan vote, then she absolutely would have been on that player coaches voting spectrum. And so I definitely think that not her being left off the all-star is going to hurt her at all, but she will get her flowers this coming month, come all-star, when the Olympic break happens. And I do not worry about the 3-on-3 team.
No, I'm really not worried about the 3-on-3 team. And quite honestly, if I'm speaking generally, I'm not worried about the women's national team in any capacity. If we speak to the men's side, there's a lot of gray area that I'm not sure about, but I'm as sure and 10 toes down fashion as I could possibly be about the women's side. And one more quick thing before we kind of transition, I just wanted to give some flowers to Dearica because she had a tumultuous and adverse last season and some change. So the fact that she had to be uprooted stemming from a championship with the Aces and everything that, transpired from that, I think she deserves everything that she's earned in the last year and a half now. And I don't think she could be in a better situation with the coach and a franchise that have kind of embraced her the way that the Los Angeles Sparks under the tutelage of Kurt Miller have, like I said, since that transaction occurred. So shout out to Dearica. I don't know if you all saw, but the Sparks had the cutest post where Dearica's daughter was basically preaching to the crowd why her mother is much more than deserving of being an all-star and is the best player in the W. It was the cutest thing. And I just highly advise everybody to go tap in with the Los Angeles Sparks. It's probably on Instagram as well, but their Twitter account, you go find that particular video. It's probably the cutest thing you're going to see all day.
Yeah, absolutely. I did smile so big, and they definitely put her up at the media stand, which I think makes it even more adorable. Onward to Phoenix's All-Stars, because we only have a few days left for All-Star voting. I wore my Agent Zero jersey
Big cloud.
special today just to make sure that I'm reiterating how important it is to me that y'all go on the WNBA app right now, tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday morning, all over and over and over again, as many times as it'll allow you on every single device, mind you, to vote for Natasha Cloud, Sophie Cunningham, and I hear through the grapevine Beck Allen could be available. Now, I'm saying could. So they are making a big push for Beck at All-Star, but that does not mean she will not be at the or not be on the Australian Olympic team. So, and I'm curious too, like as we talk about the Olympics more and more, like I'm curious if Beck did we've seen kind of how the votes have landed so far. If Beck did land with the fan vote, what would happen to that spot? I guess I'm just a little curious how the WNBA is going to handle this year for All-Star. It's obviously something they only have to deal with every few years, so it's not the end of the world, but it'll be definitely an interesting situation to watch kind of unfold over the next month or so.
Yeah, it will be. It will be. And I think Beck is deserving of the attention that she should be getting in regards to everything All-Star. That's gonna be just a fun time, generally speaking, just to get out there and see the Olympic team going up against everybody that's picked to be on that particular All-Star team and how they kind of spice everything up. It's gonna be a competitive game, especially with having so many talents. I'm really curious how many rookies are going to make the actual All-Star roster. That's going to be fun to gauge.
I have a
And
feeling it's going to be a old guard versus a new guard, and that's going to be the game we are slated for All-Star.
I don't think you're wrong in any capacity. I think it's going to be some older bigs against some younger bigs as well, based off of the way that the voting is kind of shaped out so far too. So it's just going to be a fun weekend. And I think generally for women's basketball, it's going to be a big time weekend, transitioning into what's going to be potentially historically stamping moment for the women's national team on the Olympic circuit. It's just something else that I'm looking forward to in conjunction with and after All-Star weekend.
And, it's only going to be the second time that Steven and I get to hang out in person. So, I mean, just these opportunities for us to see each other only come every once in a while. And so when it's something as exciting as an All-Star break, I just feel like we're going to have to, really celebrate while you're here.
And I think the biggest way to celebrate is by having everybody tap in and vote for the players available for the Mercury, especially Miss Cloud. I want to make sure that everybody understands how much she's earned and deserved it, the way that she sacrificed and played for this team. She's been very much an all-star in her particular role with this particular team. The numbers aren't necessarily the loudest in terms of what garners attention from fans, but if you truly watch the games, you see her impact in so many different pockets of it. She's just ultra important to everything that they do. And we want to make sure we emphasize there will be at least one more double vote day presented by the W. So when they tweet off that whatever data they decided to make it on in the morning, make sure you go out and vote from all 8 of your email accounts and tell your coworkers to do the same thing. And make sure you tap in for Natasha, because Natasha definitely deserves it. And I would love to see that for her.
Just in case you're not doing the math, if you have 8 emails, that's 16 votes on double vote day. And I feel like we could really make some leeway there. Okay.
And if you get your whole office to tap in with their work accounts and their individual personal accounts, it's just adding up. It's just adding up.
Glass ceiling, y'all.
Stack them up. Stack the votes up the way that Tosh stacks up the assists per game.
Facts. Steven's dropping bars in the chat today. Anyways, kind of on to the Mercury's weekend. We've got a pretty exciting weekend as Mercury fans. The Mercury starts the weekend by hosting the Los Angeles Sparks. I don't know how many times this season I'm going to say Las Vegas or Los Angeles in place of one another, but just know that if I say the Sparks, I mean LA, okay? So anyways, game 17 of the year, though, this will be the 9th home game of the season. So we're kind of just knocking through these home games here. And I think I'm speaking for myself, but let me know if you agree with me, Steven. This stretch of home games to me feels very important going into the All-Star break. It's really difficult to get road wins in this league. And then on top of it, you have A team like LA, who's been on the road for nearly a month at this point, they have not played a home game since the 9th of June and will not play a home game until the 2nd of July. So 28 days on the road, which is pretty criminal if you ask me. But road wins extremely difficult to come by. And again, moving into this All-Star break, Steven and I kind of alluded to this the other day, but we're expecting this team to be elevated after the All-Star break. So I feel like getting a few wins under their belt before the All-Star break comes, I feel like is really important for this team to kind of move into a headspace in order to do that in that little off-season time there.
Yeah, it's going to be extremely important because, as you can see in the Western Conference, it's going to be a gauntlet. And naturally, we talked about the Mercury working through the adversities with injury bouts that they saw early in the season, with the hopes and desires that the team would be able to get back whole and then never look back from there. So they had the stretch of games where they had how many games on the road, or how many days on the road? 5 games and 8 days on the road. And then they come back home for a pit stop, and then they go back on the road again before finally coming back home for some sustained time to actually get practice in and not have to rest and recover. They got through that stretch. It wasn't the prettiest of basketball. They accepted it. They owned it. But they also acknowledged that the schedule is going to get easier in terms of the travel and the accommodations for that. And they will also be back healthy and whole in some time too. So adding those contexts to everything, they're not looking to turn back in any capacity. And it starts with this home stretch, these 3 games that they have with the Sparks, the Fever, and then the Connecticut Sun on those 2 latter teams on the back-to-back on Sunday and Monday going into next week. They have to get, I would say all 3 games. I would like to see this team get extremely greedy and revisit that space that they were in with the 2-game win streak that they saw against the Seattle Storm and the New York Liberty at home prior to the road game against the Minnesota Lynx over this past weekend. That's the space this team needs to operate in, and that's the space they need to continue to build upon, because that can't just be their ceiling for the season. There are just so many different layers that they can get to in terms of their process on both ends of the floor. And if they handle their business in the respective ways that they should be able to, I think this team, again, like I said before, they can be the best team in the W. The opportunity is there. The personnel is there. The coaching is there. The home court advantage is there. It's just a matter of how quickly do they get all their puzzle pieces to fit together the way that they needed to. And this is a perfect opportunity to kind of match and assess that.
I absolutely feel the same way that you do, and I didn't want to say it, but I agree that I want 3 wins from them over the next 3 games. I think that is not asking too much. I think asking them to beat Connecticut on the road is very difficult. Connecticut is a very difficult place to play, so I think when you have a chance to host them, especially on the latter half of a back-to-back, I know it's going to be a little more exhausting for the Merc than some other teams, just because of the average age of this group. But that being said, I think being home, coming off the high of a game against Indiana, because let's face it, the environment on Sunday is going to be just unmatched. So moving away from that game and into the game on Monday against the Sun, I hope they carry over, hopefully, some of that electrifying energy just to kind of knock down some big shots against the Sun. And I think obviously that's the most difficult opponent they're going to face this weekend, but I think that's the most important win. If you ask me, like I said, it's really difficult to ask them to go to Connecticut and beat Connecticut. So I think it's very important that when Connecticut is in Phoenix, they beat Connecticut.
It is. It's going to be extremely important. And just kind of looking at Rebecca Allen, shout out to, is it Drea or Drea? Forgive me if I say your name the wrong way.
I think it's Drea.
I have a cousin named Drea, and then I have a friend named Drea. So I'm split 50-50 down the middle. Nonetheless, the point being made about getting Rebecca Allen going consistently can't be emphasized enough. I think we talked about it a little bit on our last podcast, but she's knocked down 8 of her last 17 or 15 3-point attempts over the last 2 games. And the attempt number is the highest over a 2-game stretch that she's seen this season so far. And the makes are by far the most over a 2-game stretch this season as well. That's the space this team needs her to operate in for them to take those next steps and turn the proverbial corners that I'm speaking to within their process. And if they're going to be optimized and reach that ceiling to where they're potentially punching as the best team in the W, it's going to be a great bit of Rebecca Allen taking and making 3-point opportunities, but also just having her general stamping and impact felt over the course of a game. Deflections on defense, rebounds, switching, defensive activity, making some passes, setting some screens on and off the ball, her cutting. Just a general IQ and how she raises the level of understanding and ability to play and read and react on the floor. Those are like the little things you really can't put a value on, especially when it's coming from a player that's not your best or your second or even your third or fourth best player on your roster. So I think the context, like I mentioned on Monday's episode, the context is perfect for her, and she's also perfect for the context. And I'm looking forward to seeing her continue to stamp more of her identity on the teams as a whole.
Y'all, we got to take just a second because Kobe just commented in the chat that my Grizzlies drafted Zach Edey. Y'all, what the frick? Why? I'm gonna have to make some calls after this. I know my brother is watching this right now. What are our Grizzlies doing, dog? What did we do to deserve this? You know? And Kobe, why did you have to come in here and ruin my vibe? I was in such a good mood. I'm like over here hee-hee-ha-haing away my day with Steven, and you come in here and I see Edey, and I'm like, oh no.
I mean, they said they were looking for a big man, so he definitely checks off that. And I actually got to see him in person. He was at the Fever Sky game on Sunday at Wintrust. He just happened to be waiting for the elevator. The elevator opens up. It was too full for me to get on, and he's sitting in the corner. I don't know how he even was able to get in there, but yeah, I saw him on the elevator. That was pretty cool, just random.
Look, my brother is having a meltdown in the comments right now. Anyways, back to the W though. I'm sorry. Thank you guys for taking time out of your draft evening to spend this time with us. It really does mean a lot. But Drea did ask another question in chat. Do you guys think Ka's production is a direct correlation to if we win or lose? And I absolutely do believe that Ka does need to produce for this team to win, but I don't think that she's the only way for this team to win. So I think that's a kind of a double whammy answered question because it absolutely can be, but I don't think it has to be.
I think you said it well. I feel like Kahleah on most nights needs to be the best player on the floor just because of her usage. And when she's operating at her best self, how it puts everybody else in positions, which is something I'm going to speak to a little bit later. But that also oftentimes comes in tandem with Brittney Griner, who, when she's the best player on the floor, it also just hits different. And you notice the games since BG's been back where her and Kahleah have both gone for 20-plus points. They've won and won relatively comfortably. So I think there's going to be a lot of games where those two players are the two best on the floor. Now, who you think might be the best on the floor at that given time? Honestly doesn't even matter, just because if those two are playing to the levels that they can and they're the two best players on the floor, including the opponent's players, that means the Mercury are winning for sure. And everything that they do on both ends of the floor is going to hit differently. So I think Kahleah most nights will be the best player on the team, but I do think that Brittney is also going to have say-so in that as well with how impactful she is with her play inside out, as well as her screening and her defense.
And Steven actually asked Kahleah about this earlier. I want to say it was late last week. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I asked her about the two-man play. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's take a look at that clip real quick.
Like I said before, you have to make a decision. You can't go under. That's one. And then you go over, and now I got the help, and now BG is rolling. Bucket. Now, if you help on the weak side, D's rising. Bucket. You make a decision. So it's a tough cover. But you know, she's getting me free every time. So just trying to reward her and trying to play out of that.
And that really just speaks to Kahleah's growth in the pick and roll context, because she's transitioned from a player that usually played on the margins, kind of similarly to how Rebecca Allen does with the Phoenix Mercury or Sophie Cunningham does with the Mercury right now, to becoming a player that spent a little bit more time with the ball in her hands in isolation, to now being a player that also spends a lot of time playing in pick and roll. And that naturally makes for an opportunity for the Mercury to have their two best players, like we just spoke about with Drea, involved in direct action. Defenses have to make a decision. And because of Kahleah Copper's growth as a 3-level scorer, you can't try to cheat that 2-player game. You have to stay committed to her, and that's naturally going to garner extra attention. Now the defense's dominoes are falling in your favor, and Kahleah is not only a 3-level scorer, but she's also able to make a multitude of passes out of that pick and roll or dribble handoff context with Brittney Griner. And now the defense is at your mercy. They're in a situation that I like to call can't be right scenarios, where if you do this, They have a direct and they have a impactful counterpunch. If you decide to send extra help, Diana Taurasi's wide open for a three from somewhere. Rebecca Allen's wide open for a three-pointer somewhere. If you commit to Kahleah, Brittany Griner's open on the roll. And if you happen to have a lapse in your coverage on the ball, Kahleah can score from three, mid-range, or at the cup. And it's just, like I said, it's just tough to deal with as a defense. It really puts you in a bind. And they really dictate to opponents. So it's been fun to see that relationship develop. And this is just them scratching the surface of what's to come down the line, which I think arguably is potentially the best pick and roll tandem in the W so far this season.
And I want you guys to hear when Kahleah was talking right now, she sounded borderline almost evil. And that's because this team does realize the embarrassment of riches that they have on this team. So they see how dangerous of a threat that they can be. And they know, to Steven's point, that they are just scratching the surface, and they know how good that they can be.
And yes, you that is perfect. He said, I like that you said Kai sounded a little evil. That's the dog in her, because she understands.
She said bucket, like she was about to kill you when she said it. Bucket. I'm like,
and that's how those buckets hit. Again, when you're trying to figure out how to guard them in that context and you just literally don't have an answer, that's how it hits. It hits like it's evil to the opponents. And I think the other big thing for me with Kahleah, I love when players are able to speak to their growth in such a confident way. And if you notice, after I got done asking the question, the first thing that Kahleah made note of was that you can't go under screens. A lot of times when she had the ball in pick and roll over the last couple of seasons, teams would try to sprinkle in unders to cut off her drives and also to try to bait her or invite her to shoot three-pointers. That's not a good decision anymore because she's knocking down her three-pointers at such an efficient clip. That's the skill development and the growth that you want to see from any player. And for Kahleah to have done so, coming from where she came from a player that wasn't seen as an elite level player, to really just, like I called it a couple of episodes ago last week, having that stubborn pride that's positive to being a great player. She's ascended from, like I said, being a sixth player to being a role player to being a starter to being a finals MVP to being an all-star to being a EuroLeague MVP and champion, as well as a champion in the W, and to now being arguably the best player on her team with the Phoenix Mercury and being a perennial all-star, all-WNBA caliber player on both sides of the ball.
For her to be option one on this team, Steven is saying, is really great. Like, there are some real pieces on this team, and she really is option one in almost every situation that they put the Phoenix Mercury in. Kahleah is their first option. And I think that just goes to show the belief that they have in one another, kind of what we just spoke about, how high the ceiling is. When you have a player that is your first option that is as good as Kahleah Copper is and can play at the caliber in which we have seen Kahleah play even already just this year, I mean, the sky is really, I don't mean to say the sky's name in vain, but the sky really is the limit here.
That was kind of unavoidable at that point. It just fell right in your lap. I get you. But yeah, Kahleah really helps to properly position everything else in terms of just the layering of everything. Diana Taurasi being able to play in catch and shoot scenarios more is a major advantage for the Phoenix Mercury, as well as Diana herself. Kahleah naturally having the ball in her hands more is just an advantage in and of itself. Being able to garner that attention for Brittany to get downhill on rolls and even potentially pop sometimes based off of what the spacing looks like is important. Sophie Cunningham, Rebecca Allen, Natasha Cloud can all play well when the defense is tilted. Now they're put in perfect positions to play to their strengths. And it's just like every puzzle piece for their offense is fit when Kahleah is operating to the best of her superpowers. And she's been at that particular pace more often than not this season. And it just makes this team just so tough to deal with.
Absolutely. Well, moving in, we talked a little bit about the Sparks. We've actually talked a little bit about the Sun, but we kind of have neglected to talk about the middle team a little bit. And it's a team that everyone's been talking about the most. And actually, before we get into it, my dad, right when I got home, my dad told me something really exciting about the Indiana Fever. And I wanted to make sure I mentioned it because I think the league is going to be doing themselves a disservice if they don't take them up on this offer. And so I don't even think, I bet you haven't heard about it, Stephen. Caitlin Clark, everyone's beloved rookie, has been invited to the 2025 WWE Royal Rumble. And when I tell you that this news took me aback, and the Royal Rumble's in Indy now. So, and I think you've heard me complain about the lack of Indiana Fever players at the Indy 500. You remember my grudges about it. I had things to say.
That was a major
And
fumble, major bad fumble.
you know how I feel about it, but luckily the Royal Rumble is in February. So I'm thinking to myself how big of a marketing, for lack of a better term, gimmick that this could be. And I literally scrumped a small scream when my dad told me this. I'm like, please get her in the ring right now, immediately. I need to see her get thrown over the top rope. Like, I grew up on wrestling, so I just feel like those two worlds combining would be just chef's kiss. You guys know what I mean?
That would be something I don't think the W has ever had in terms of a player
I was
crossing
doing
into
some
that.
Googling.
Yeah, crossing into that part of culture in wrestling. That is for people that don't know, wrestling fans go hard for whichever entity of wrestling it is that they tap in with. That would be a spectacle, to say the least.
During the All-Star break, we'll get into my history with wrestling a little bit. You guys will find it very interesting. But anyways, now though, this is Caitlin's first time as a rookie in Phoenix, and this will not be Aaliyah's first time. They did visit Phoenix last year with the Fever, so the duo in tandem will have halfway been to Phoenix before, but as a team, this new, obviously young team, it will be their first time this season in Phoenix, and I think that we're due for a pretty exciting matchup. If you guys saw on my Twitter this afternoon, my good friend David over again at Desert Wave interviewed Diana today, and Diana was asked by Mr. David why, or if she was excited about this game, and Diana said, "It's going to be fun." And I had to hardcore laugh at that. I think that both teams are ready for this matchup. I think both teams have, quite frankly, been anticipating this matchup. I think that it was marked on each other's calendars quite early in the season based off the comments that were taken, quite frankly, out of context by Diana Taurasi earlier this year. And I think that those contexts, or those comments being taken out of context, put a target on her back a little bit. And I think she definitely, for lack of a better term, backtracked a little bit and took it back at media day in not so many words, and just said, like, she's a really great player, and all of that is true. I'm going to be looking for good vibes on Sunday. I think that these two teams are going to be going at each other, but I also think that it is going to be really good basketball. I think, again, like Steven and I were saying, this is a really important game in order to just kind of see where the Phoenix Mercury are at as far as their skill level at this point in the season. I mean, that will be game 20. I think that is a very important kind of landmark for the season. And I think getting that win over this younger team will really prove not only to themselves as the Mercury squad, but also the fans and everyone surrounding them that we're the real deal and we're really here to win.
Yeah. I think to start with the Diana portion, I say this with great respect, of course, to the legend and the one of the GOATs that Diana Taurasi is in all of basketball, not just the women's side. There are few players that have embraced a quote unquote, and I put it in quotes because I don't look at it as it, but I can see why other people might, the villain role. There are few players across all of basketball that have embraced any opportunity in a villain context the way that Diana is. She is a stone cold killer and a dog that's self-motivated out of this world. And anytime she can find even an ounce of a lick of motivation to come from anything external, it really just flips the switch from that's already on to now you're breaking the socket and there's fire and sparks going all over the place with the competitive fire that Diana Taurasi has burning in her from the moment that she wakes up. And she probably is burning competitive fire when she's sleeping, to be honest. The way she's built is just different. So needless to say, all of that context applied. You better believe Diana sees and hears everything and has seen and heard everything that stemmed from that initial commenting that she had, which, I mean, if you've been paying attention and you're looking at it from an unbiased perspective, she's been very much right in her assessments and everything that she mentioned, that she noted a handful of months ago. But also, Diana just quite literally does not care. Like, all of that stuff. She's like, at this point,
and in the video on my Twitter, you can see it. She's like, why are you even asking me this question? Like, I literally could not care less about this 22-year-old that's about to come over here and just happens to play basketball at the same time as me. Like, and so I think and Angel said this, that, you know, we've kind of made, actually, it was Caitlin that said it. We've made these storylines. The media has created, for lack of a better term, something out of nothing quite a few times. And so while this game is exciting for us, to them, I think it really is just another basketball game.
I won't say it's just another, only because there is a certain volume of crowd gravity that comes with Caitlin. And I think it's not because of Caitlin, but I think because the basketball environment, the crowd is just that much more involved in the game. I think that naturally ups the ante on the level of play that we see on the court. It's like it's a spiritual type of experience having so many people at any particular game, especially when it's, I'm not going to say just a regular season game because it certainly matters, but it's not a playoff game and it's not a championship game. It's not even a Commissioner's Cup championship game. But there's going to be a heavy crowd presence and everybody's going to be involved in the game. And I think that's naturally going to make things just that much more intriguing to watch. It's going to make the level of basketball that we see take steps to a higher level as well because of it.
Chris in the comments said I would put money on a DT Tech on Sunday. I would beg to agree with that. If that's an option on the BetMGM Sportsbook app, I would definitely take that option all day long. That being said, though,
I mean, they do lead the league in technical fouls.
But I also
no
think
surprise.
if she gets one more, I think she's one away from a one-game suspension. I want to say, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because it's 5 or is it 6 that they?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I know it's a short number. It's not nearly as long
small.
as the threshold. Yeah,
it's small.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm like, Diana reaches that in like 10 games, y'all. Like, she does not need help.
Man, that takes the occurrence that we saw that Kelsey Plum spoke to coming into this season in terms of one of her moments with DT. That takes that off the board in terms of it happening with Caitlin, because they're bound to end up guarding each other in some capacity, and there will be some touching involved in terms of physicality and trying to push each other off their marks.
In case you guys didn't know, basketball is a contact sport, so there will be contact on Sunday. I also will guarantee that.
Yeah, for sure. And with DT's involved, you're definitely going to get some type of activity as far as that goes. So it's going to be fun to gauge it. I think she'll keep it basketball like she typically does. But I think more than that, I'm mentioning it because she'll be cognizant of, the technical foul situation, not wanting to put her team in a situation where they have to potentially play without her with a handful of the competitive games that they have coming up in their schedule slate.
Absolutely. And the Fever have had a pretty difficult. Oh, Chris did the research for us. Shout out to Miss Chris Melton, because
shout out to Chris. Again, we appreciate you.
7th Tech 1-game suspension. So I want to say that she is at 5. So I could have been wrong about the one-off, but I'll take a look and I'll send you guys a little tweet after and let you guys know where we're at on the Tech count for Miss DT, because I feel like that is pretty relevant information to probably most of us in the chat at this point.
Most definitely.
But you've gotten to see the Fever play in person just once or twice this year.
Twice, and they played this guy 3 times already. So needless to say, I've seen them play quite a bit. They've hit themselves a nice little stride in terms of turning corners with their team's process. They figured out how to get Aaliyah Boston a lot more involved, and she's looking a lot more like that perennial all-star player that she's burgeoning to be, pretty much even potentially to start this season, honestly. So looking at that, looking at the way Alyssa Smith has stepped up and how she's had two-way impact. Kelsey Mitchell still an all-star level guard. Caitlin is one of the best passers in the W, especially from a rookie. And obviously one of the better scorers in the league as well, one of the better three-point shooters too. I think Chrissy Size and company are really starting to figure out how to feature all of the pieces that they have within their house to optimize them all within everything that they're looking to do. And a lot of their growth is coming on the offensive side of the ball. They have a lot of variety that they run through their offense with because of the versatility and styles of players that they have. I can honestly see if they were to keep this team around for some time, they could take on the look of the Phoenix Mercury, just obviously in a lot more youthful and exuberant way. You could look at the Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston pick and roll tandem as something that could certainly be akin to everything that you've seen from Diana Taurasi and Brittany Griner. You could talk about Kelsey Mitchell and everything that she does on the periphery sometimes, but also what she could do on the ball to then position Caitlin Clark to be off the ball, as a lot of what we see with Kahleah Copper and what she does individually in isolation play, off of screens, and then also in pick and roll with Aaliyah Boston. You can look at the ancillary things that Alyssa Smith does and how she provides toughness and how she provides IQ and versatility around the periphery of their 3 best players or even their 4 best players. And you could akin that to what Rebecca Allen does and Sophie Cunningham does with the Phoenix Mercury. I think there's a lot of symmetry in between these 2 rosters, obviously with the youthfulness being on the side of the Phoenix or the Indiana Fever, excuse me. But I think there's a template there for the Fever to kind of try to tap into in some capacity. And I think that's something that could breed some sustainability for them going forward. But they certainly hit a stride. Defense is still something that they have ups and downs with. But the fact that they figured out how to make their pieces fit on offense to the capacities that they have over this last 2.5 weeks or so, they've started to look a lot different. They're sitting at 7-11 right now. But that record, independent of it, they just feel like a team that's turning corners right now.
Yeah, they absolutely do feel like they're kind of finding their stride and getting, for lack of a better term, getting their shit together a little bit on both ends of the court. And I'm hoping just for some good basketball on Sunday. It's obviously going to be an exciting environment. All of you in the comments are going to be there. Although I've heard through the grapevine that some PHNX diehards have a self-organized meetup going on at the Diamondbacks game. So I'm a little jealous, actually, that I don't get to be present at this Diamondbacks event. And also, while we're on the topic of the Sunday basketball game, if you do plan on attending this basketball game, I've already gotten a few questions asking me, Erica, what's your advice about parking? It sounds like it's going to be a super busy day downtown. I have some advice. First and foremost, if you live in Phoenix, take whatever the trolley thing is called. Leah, I think that's a Sun Tram or something like that. Maybe I'm right. But take that thing if you live in Phoenix. If you don't, though, please, 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 I beg of you to buy the light rail. I was close enough. Take the light rail. If you have a ticket to a game, like the light rail is free, like so you don't have to park. It's going to be parking mania. So, but if you don't live in Phoenix and you have to drive like me, the big dummy up here in Phoenix or in Tucson, then do go ahead and prepay for a parking pass. Literally anywhere nearby the arena, everything is in close walking distance. If you've never been to the Footprint Center, everything is close by, but parking is not fun to find if you do not have a prepaid pass. Okay. And with all the events going on Sunday, I'm giving y'all your warning now.
And what I'll say for context, it might be slightly different because Phoenix is on the other side of the country compared to where I'm at here in Chicago. But proximity wise, Chicago is right next door to Iowa. As far as WNBA teams, unless they're going to Minnesota, it doesn't get any closer in terms of their fans traveling to a game. And the way that they packed the Wintrust Arena for that game on Sunday between the Sky and the Fever, it was crazy. It was crazy, especially for a game that, like I said, is in the middle of the regular season, doesn't have the highest of implications. The way that they packed and they traveled to watch their team and their favorite player play, it was something. And it also added to the parking issues here in Chicago as well. So I would highly advise getting there earlier than early. Whatever time you usually get there for a Mercury game, I would probably say try to get there an hour sooner than that, just to make sure that you will give yourself the opportunity to get a parking spot if that's what you're doing, and to try to beat some of that traffic. I think it sounds like it's going to be inevitable given everything that's going on in downtown Phoenix on Sunday. But the least you could do is give yourself that and just get there sooner than you typically would, just to make sure you're squared away on that end. Because it was a zoo here in Chicago on Sunday trying to get downtown to get to the south side for the Sky game.
And I mean, we just saw it a few weeks ago. Kate Martin fans showed up in droves. So
Yeah.
if they show up like that for Kate Martin, I just can't imagine how it's actually going to be come Sunday for Miss Cece. But I've actually missed a super chat, and I feel bad now because it's Mark, my best friend. And, while it is a shot at me, I do have to make sure that we say it out loud, Wow, great point, Steven. Erica, keep up. Thank you, Mark.
Hey, Mark, if you could provide context to what was the conversation we were having when you sent us that super chat, I'd appreciate that.
Steven, you could have said the sky was black, and Mark would have been like, Steven, you're right.
Either way, I appreciate you, Mark. And Erica might not admit it at this moment in time, but we appreciate you for always tapping in. That's a couple of super chats that you've left up as us as well. And we appreciate those independent of that too. So thank you generally for you, Mark. We appreciate you.
Mark knows where he stands with me, and I'll see him on Friday.
That was a very DT type of tone that you said that with. So I'm gonna leave that at that. You can fill in a blank with that.
Before we go though, some light housekeeping. Next week is 4th of July, so our schedule is going to look a little bit different. I do believe we're going to be live on Tuesday, but I'll send out some tweets just to make sure that I get you guys that information 100% for proper. And then while we're on the other subject of good teams coming to visit Phoenix, I do have to mention the takeover going on in August when PHNX treats us all to a really fun time. We're going to go get some pregame food and drink over at the Desmond and then walk over just about a block over to the Footprint Center and watch the Phoenix Mercury take on the New York Liberty for the second time in Phoenix this season. And I think it's going to be pretty fun. We saw the first matchup and how it ended. And I think it's only inevitable that the second matchup at home is even more fun. What do you think, Steven?
That is going to be one of the best games of the season. I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and project that now. The way that the most recent game that happened almost a week ago from today, the way that game turned out, the ups and downs, the general competitive back and forth, the chess being played from Sandy and Nate, be there for that game. Celebrate with us. Come kick it with us. Let's watch some great basketball together.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty excited about it. I had so much fun in our first one, and to go see it again for the second time with you guys is just going to be even more fun. It was our first time, so now we get to take off the Band-Aid and we don't have to pretend like we've never been in the Footprint Center before. We've been there, many a times. So I don't get lost there anymore, and we don't have to get lost there together. So see you guys in August, okay?
Hopefully, Friday you get to show Rakia where the bathrooms are this time instead of y'all going to figure it out together. I just gave y'all some backstage stories. So now you gotta vent story time real quick.
Okay. The first game I ever went to that I was working, and I don't view this as work. I have so much fun doing this. I really don't feel like I work an hour of my time in the Footprint Center. None of it is work. But I'm walking around and I'm trying to find a bathroom. You guys, if you follow me on Twitter, you've seen me and Mike banter about the bathrooms that I cannot seem to find up in the Great Phoenix area. And so I'm walking around the Footprint Center trying to find the bathroom. And who do I damn near walk into? Rakia Jackson. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I feel so bad. It's my first time. Like, I don't want to be in the way. And she just goes, oh, no, me too. I'm also lost. And we just had a nice little chuckle there in the hallway. And it was definitely a moment where I'm like, okay, Erica, you don't have to be so scared that you can't find the damn bathroom. You can ask someone for help. It's literally not the end of the world. It is someone's job to tell you where the bathroom is. It is okay.
And this was a preseason game, correct?
It surely was. I was my first, other than media day, it was my first time in the Footprint Center. So, and my mom is right. Bathrooms are a thing for me. Like I've got to go to the restroom. Okay. And I'm sorry about it. Okay. Mike has been giving me shit for that bathroom story for like the last 3 months. So not only is the parking terribles, but the bathrooms went missing. Well, no, they weren't missing. I'm just dumb.
I'll give one more quick shout out, Chris. Chris, you could definitely sit by me at the next game. Let's make sure we make that happen.
Let's. I'm super excited. But we've done great work today, and we've got really exciting stuff planned for you guys next week, planned for you guys during All-Star break, planned for you guys during Olympic break. The next month or so is just going to be a blast. Let me just tell y'all that right now. Okay. So before we go, Steven, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at StayTrueS.3. You can also find me on YouTube at Steven Prejean Garner. Definitely subscribe to my YouTube page over there. Got a lot more stuff coming up. Got a couple of film sessions I'll be tapping in with, stemming from their last 2 games against the Liberty as well as against the Minnesota Lynx, and just kind of looking at some of the things going on the court, and just some things that I'm kind of keeping note of going forward. And I also hope to have some more writing up before the game on Friday as well. So you'll be able to obviously find that on the gophnx.com site. So yeah, be on the lookout for work from there, and then the general game threads that I'm doing during. If you're watching from home, definitely kind of check it out on the Twitter timeline. Ask me questions. I usually post kind of question and answer sessions throughout the day on game days, as long as it's not a game day where the Sky and the Mercury are playing at the same time. So, yeah, if you got questions or just general thoughts about the Mercury, look forward to that being posted on the Twitter timeline on Friday, sometime early in the day. And let's continue to clean up this Discord space of ours around this game that we so love.
Absolutely. And Dave Y in the chat says WNBA All-Star Double Vote Day is tomorrow, June 27th.
There you go.
So listen,
there you go.
If you haven't voted yet today, go do that right now and on all your accounts, all your devices. So in 24 hours, you can do it again and we can get double the votes. And Chris is actually also right before I move on from this whole bathroom shenanigans. Yeah, I also ran out into Chris like literally 10 minutes later after I found the bathroom. So it was really just like, oh my gosh, one goat after another. You know what I mean? I'm like running into so many goats, you know, I didn't know what to even do with myself that day. But as my mom said in the chat, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, leave us a 5-star review, all that good stuff. Go to gophnx.com. Y'all only got one all-star and that's Copper. LOL. I think I know who that is, but I'm not sure. But I'm going to tell you the God honest truth, and that is just completely blasphemous. And so, anyways, follow me on Twitter at Erica Lee Day. And if you're not following the PHNX Mercury on Twitter, do that at PHNX_Mercury. And we will see you guys next week.
We all silly like the mayor.